She slipped on the wet floor, trying to catch a falling pitcher. Her lips accidentally brushed the cheek of the suited man beside her. The entire restaurant went silent. What she didn't know, the man she'd just kissed was a mafia boss who owned half the city. And he'd been coming back every night since, just to see her smile again. The rain hit Chicago like bullets against glass. Rosa Martinez pressed her forehead against the kitchen door of Bellinotte, watching water flood down Michigan Avenue in sheets. Her sneakers were already soaked through. She'd walked 40 minutes to work because the bus fare meant choosing between dinner or transportation. She'd chosen work.
Rosa.
Table 7 needs water. Marco, the head waiter, snapped his fingers at her. She grabbed the pitcher and rushed back into the dining room. Saturday nights were hell, but Saturday nights during a storm were worse. Half the staff hadn't shown up, and the restaurant was packed with people seeking shelter and expensive wine. Rosa had been waitressing here for 8 months. Bellinotte wasn't just some Italian restaurant. It was the Italian restaurant. Politicians ate here. Celebrities proposed here.
And Rosa?
She cleaned up after them, smiled through their condescension, and deposited her tips into an envelope marked Mom's Treatment. "Excuse me, miss?" A woman in a fur coat waved her empty martini glass like a flag. "Right away, ma'am." Rosa wove through tables, balancing waters and menus, her black uniform dress clinging to her damp skin. Thunder rattled the windows. Someone's child started crying near the host stand, a little girl, maybe 5 years old, sobbing about the lightning. "Hey, sweetie," Rosa crouched down, forgetting the martini woman entirely. "You know what? Thunder is just clouds bumping into each other. They're clumsy, like me." The girl sniffled, almost smiling.
Rosa.
Marco hissed from across the room. "We have VIP arrivals. Move." She stood quickly, too quickly. Her wet sneakers skidded on the marble tile near the entrance, exactly where someone had tracked in rain. Her arms windmilled. The water pitcher flew from her hands, arcing through the air in slow motion. Rosa lunged forward to catch it and kissed a stranger directly on the cheek. Time stopped. Her lips had pressed against warm skin, rough with 5 o'clock shadow, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and rain. She'd grabbed his shoulders for balance, expensive suit fabric, stiff and tailored beneath her fingers. The entire restaurant went silent.
Rosa stumbled backward, face burning.
"Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, Then she looked up. The man was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair slicked back and a jawline sharp enough to cut diamonds. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent. But it was his eyes that made her stomach drop, cold, calculating, the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He wasn't smiling. The little girl was still holding his hand. I slipped. I was trying to." Rosa's voice cracked. "Please, I'm so sorry, sir." Behind him, 2 massive men in black suits had their hands inside their jackets. The restaurant staff had frozen like deer in headlights. Marco looked like he might faint. The man slowly raised one hand and touched his cheek, where her lips had been. His expression was unreadable. "You work here?" His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. Authority.
Danger.
"Yes, sir."
"I'm so sorry."
"It was an accident, I swear." "What's your name?"
Rosa.
Rosa Martinez. She was trembling now, her hands clasped together. "Please don't fire me. I need this job. My mom, she's sick and—" "Rosa," he said her name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "You just kissed me." "I didn't mean to. The floor was wet, and I slipped, and—" In front of my entire restaurant. His restaurant. Rosa's knees nearly buckled. She'd heard rumors about the owner of Bellinotte, some businessman from New York who owned half the restaurants in Chicago, some of them fronts for God knew. She'd never paid attention to gossip. She just needed the paycheck. "Mr. DeLuca," Marco appeared, white-faced, wringing his hands. "Please accept our deepest apologies. This girl is new, completely inexperienced. We'll terminate her immediately." No, Lorenzo De Luca's eyes never left Rosa's face. You won't.
Marco blinked.
Sir? She was helping my niece. Lorenzo glanced down at the little girl, who had stopped crying and was now watching Rosa with curious eyes. Weren't you, Rosa? Yes. She was scared of the thunder. Something flickered across Lorenzo's face. Surprise, maybe. Or amusement. His lips curved into the faintest smirk. Brave, he murmured. Touching me?
Talking to me.
Most people can't manage either. Rosa didn't know what to say to that. She stood there, dripping rainwater onto marble, feeling like the entire world was watching her die of humiliation. Lorenzo wiped a drop of water from his sleeve. Water from her pitcher, she realized with horror. Then he straightened his tie and looked at Marco. Give her table 6. I'll be dining there tonight. Of course, Mr. De Luca. Right away. He walked past Rosa, his niece's hand tucked safely in his, the 2 bodyguards flanking them like shadows. As he passed, he leaned in just slightly, voice low enough that only she could hear. Next time you kiss me, Rosa Martinez, don't apologize. Then he was gone, settling into the corner booth like a king claiming his throne. Rosa stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. What the hell just happened? Marco grabbed her elbow. You, he hissed, are the luckiest idiot alive. Or the stupidest. Maybe both. Now get him water before he changes his mind about keeping you employed. Rosa nodded numbly and stumbled toward the kitchen, her cheek still burning where it had touched his. Behind her, the restaurant slowly came back to life. Silverware clinked. Conversations resumed. Rain continued hammering the windows. But Rosa couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That accidental kiss, that stupid, humiliating moment, had just changed everything. She just didn't know how yet. Rosa's hands shook as she filled the water glass. Through the kitchen door's small window, she could see Lorenzo De Luca sitting in booth 6, his niece coloring on the paper tablecloth with crayons some waiter had nervously provided. The 2 bodyguards stood at attention near the entrance, arms crossed, scanning the room like hawks. You're dead, whispered Jenny, the cocktail waitress, sidling up beside her. You know that, right? You're absolutely dead. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter, Jenny's eyes were wide. Do you know who that is? Lorenzo De Luca doesn't just own this restaurant. He owns half of Chicago. My cousin's boyfriend's brother worked in one of his warehouses and disappeared after he saw something he shouldn't have. Rosa's stomach twisted. That's just a rumor. Is it? Jenny glanced toward the booth. 3 months ago, a food critic gave one of his restaurants a bad review. The critic's car got torched the next week. Coincidence? Stop it, Marco appeared, his face still pale but his voice sharp. Both of you. Rosa, take him his water.
Now.
And for God's sake, don't speak unless spoken to. Rosa lifted the tray, her legs feeling like rubber. The walk across the dining room felt like a death march. Every eye in the restaurant followed her. The other waiters had stopped pretending to work, watching her approach booth 6 like she was walking to the gallows. Water, sir. Rosa set the glass down carefully, avoiding eye contact. Thank you. Lorenzo didn't look up from the menu. His voice was calm, almost bored. The little girl smiled at Rosa. I like your earrings. They were cheap silver hoops from a street vendor, probably tarnishing. Thank you, sweetheart. Sophia, Lorenzo glanced at his niece. Let the lady work. Rosa stood there, pen poised over her notepad, waiting. Lorenzo studied the menu for what felt like an eternity. Behind her, she could hear whispers spreading through the restaurant like wildfire. Kissed him right on the... playing with fire. Probably planned it. Mr. De Luca will have the osso buco, one of the bodyguards announced from across the room. And the lady will have chicken fingers. No sides. Lorenzo finally looked up at Rosa, one eyebrow raised. Do I look like I need someone to order for me, Sal? The bodyguard's jaw tightened. No, sir. My apologies. Good. Lorenzo returned his attention to Rosa, and she forced herself to meet his eyes. The lasagna. And a glass of the Barolo. Sophia wants chicken fingers and apple juice. Right away, sir. Rosa scribbled the order, her handwriting barely legible. And Rosa? She froze. Yes.
Breathe.
You look like you're about to pass out. I'm fine, sir. Liar, but there was no anger in his voice. Almost. Amusement? How long have you worked here? 8 months. You like it? What kind of question was that? She needed the job. Whether she liked it was irrelevant, but something in his eyes made her answer honestly. It pays the bills. Practical answer. He closed the menu and handed it to her.
Go on.
Before Marco has a heart attack. Rosa hurried back to the kitchen, where the staff immediately swarmed her. What did he say? Did he threaten you? Why does he keep looking over here? I don't know. Rosa pushed past them to clip the order.
He just
ordered food. Like a normal person. Lorenzo De Luca is not a normal person, Marco hissed. Do you understand? Men like him don't forget. They don't forgive. You kissed a mafia boss, Rosa. Even by accident, that's. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. Just serve the food. Keep your mouth shut, and pray he finds it amusing enough to let you live. Rosa's throat went dry. You think he'd actually? I think we don't ask questions about what Lorenzo De Luca would or wouldn't do. We survive by staying invisible. The dinner service felt like it lasted 3 years. Rosa brought the lasagna, the Barolo, the chicken fingers. Each trip to booth 6 made her heart pound harder. But Lorenzo barely acknowledged her. He ate slowly, helping Sophia cut her chicken, occasionally wiping sauce from her chin. He looked almost normal, like a regular uncle taking his niece to dinner. Except regular uncles didn't have bodyguards, or reputations that made grown men go pale. When Lorenzo finally stood to leave, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. He buttoned his suit jacket, took Sophia's hand, and walked toward the exit. Rosa busied herself clearing nearby tables, trying to become invisible.
Marco.
The manager appeared instantly. Yes, Mr. De Luca? The girl who slipped.
Rosa.
Marco swallowed hard. Yes, sir. Lorenzo pulled out his wallet and placed $500 bills on the host stand. Her tip. And Marco? Keep her on staff. Of course, sir. Absolutely. I like respectful people. Lorenzo's eyes found Rosa across the room. She froze, cloth in hand. People who tell the truth. They're rare. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, black cars pulling away into the storm. The restaurant erupted into whispers the moment he left. Rosa stood there, staring at the $500 on the host's stand, her mind reeling. Marco grabbed the money and shoved it into her apron pocket. You, he said quietly, just became the luckiest waitress in Chicago. Or the most cursed. I honestly can't tell which. Rosa went home that night with $500, a job she'd somehow kept, and the unsettling memory of Lorenzo De Luca's eyes watching her across the dining room. It's over, she told herself. Just a weird night. He'd forgotten about her already. But deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, Rosa knew better. It wasn't over. It had barely begun. Rosa almost didn't come to work the next evening. She'd spent all night staring at the $500 spread across her kitchen table, her mother asleep in the next room, and wondered if taking Lorenzo De Luca's money meant she owed him something. People like him didn't give without expecting a return. But rent was due in 3 days, and her mother's medication cost $200 a bottle. So Rosa went to work. The Sunday dinner shift started quietly. Families mostly. A few couples. Rosa moved through her section on autopilot, smiling at toddlers, recommending the ravioli, pretending yesterday hadn't happened. Rosa, Jenny grabbed her arm near the kitchen. Don't look now, but... What? Black cars. 3 of them. Outside. Rosa's blood went cold. Through the window, she watched a familiar charcoal suit emerge from the back seat. Lorenzo de Luca straightened his cuffs, said something to his bodyguards, and walked toward the restaurant entrance like he owned the world. Because he did own it. At least this part of it. Why is he here?
Rosa whispered.
He was just here yesterday. I don't know, but Marco's about to have a stroke. Jenny nodded toward the manager, who was speed-walking toward the door, his face a mask of panic and forced politeness. Mr. De Luca. What an unexpected pleasure. We didn't have you in the reservation book. I don't need reservations, Marco. Lorenzo stepped inside, his eyes scanning the dining room with the precision of a man who noticed everything. I'm reviewing business performance, making sure my investment is being properly managed. Marco's smile looked painful. Of course, sir. Of course. Please take any table you'd like. I'll have Giuseppe prepare something special. Not necessary. Coffee's fine. Lorenzo's gaze landed on Rosa, who was frozen halfway between the kitchen and table 12. I'll sit in section 3, Rosa's section. Marco's eyes widened. Sir, I can have Antonio cover section 3 if you'd prefer more experienced. Section 3 is fine. There was no arguing with that tone. Marco practically bowed as Lorenzo moved toward the corner booth, not the same one as yesterday, but close. A position where he could see the entire restaurant, where he could see her. Rosa forced herself to breathe and walked over, notepad ready. Good evening, Mr. De Luca. Rosa, he settled into the booth, unbuttoning his jacket. No niece tonight.
No wormuncle routine.
Just him, watching her with those calculating dark eyes.
Coffee.
Black. Right away, sir. She escaped to the coffee station, where Jenny and 2 other waiters had gathered like conspirators. This is insane, Antonio muttered. Lorenzo de Luca doesn't check on restaurants. He has people for that. Regional managers. Accountants. Then why is he here? Jenny looked at Rosa. He's watching you. He is not. He absolutely is. He hasn't looked at the menu once. Just you. Rosa's hands trembled as she poured the coffee. This was wrong. All of it. Men like Lorenzo de Luca didn't return to restaurants 2 nights in a row unless something was wrong. Unless someone had done something. Maybe the kiss had offended him more than he'd let on. Maybe he was here to fire her personally. Maybe.
Rosa.
Coffee's overflowing. She jerked back, hot liquid spilling across the counter. Damn it. You're rattled. Antonio grabbed towels. Look, just serve the coffee, don't make eye contact, and let him do whatever weird power play this is. These rich guys get off on intimidation. But when Rosa approached the booth, Lorenzo wasn't looking at her with intimidation. He was reading something on his phone, looking almost
bored.
Your coffee, sir. Thank you. He took a sip, grimaced slightly. How's your mother? Rosa nearly dropped the coffee pot. Excuse me? Your mother. Last night you mentioned she was sick. How did he remember that? She'd barely said it, panicked and apologizing, certain she was about to be thrown out.
She's
managing. Thank you for asking. What's wrong with her? This felt like a trap, but his face showed nothing but polite interest. Like they were having a normal conversation. Like he wasn't a man who could ruin her life with a phone call. Lung disease, Rosa said carefully. She needs medication. It's expensive. Lorenzo nodded slowly, his fingers drumming against the coffee cup. And you work here to pay for it? Yes, sir. How many jobs?
2.
I clean offices on weekday mornings. Something flickered in his expression. That's why you look tired.
Rosa stiffened.
I'm sorry if my appearance isn't. I didn't say it was a problem. I said you look tired. He set down the coffee. When's the last time you slept more than 5 hours? I don't. Why are you asking me this? For a long moment, Lorenzo just looked at her. The restaurant buzzed with conversation around them, but their booth felt isolated. A bubble where dangerous questions hung in the air. Curiosity, he finally said. You're different from the others here. How? You didn't recognize me yesterday. Everyone else did. The staff, the customers. They all knew exactly who I was. He leaned back, studying her. But you just saw a man holding a scared child. Rosa didn't know what to say to that. Do you know who I am, Rosa? Now that you've had time to hear the gossip?
She swallowed hard.
Yes, sir. And, you still want coffee. So, I'm bringing you coffee. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Practical again. It's a job, Mr. DeLuca. I'm here to work, not judge customers. Even customers who could destroy your life. Rosa met his eyes. Especially those customers. They tip better when you smile. This time he did smile. A real one. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less dangerous. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can't it be both? Lorenzo laughed, an actual laugh, quiet but genuine. Several staff members turned to stare. Go on, he said, waving her away. Before Marco has an aneurysm thinking I'm keeping you from your tables, Rosa nodded and turned to leave.
Rosa?
She looked back. I'll be here tomorrow night too. Same table. It wasn't a question. It was a promise. Lorenzo de Luca kept his promise. Monday night, coffee and tiramisu he barely touched. Tuesday night, espresso and the house special, which he ate while reading financial reports. Wednesday night, just coffee. He sat for 45 minutes, occasionally glancing up when Rosa passed by. By Thursday, the staff had stopped whispering and started accepting it as routine. Lorenzo de Luca, Chicago's most feared man, had apparently decided Bella Nate needed personal supervision. And for reasons no one could understand, that supervision required sitting in Rosa Martinez's section. Does he ever talk to you? Jenny asked during their break, both of them leaning against the alley wall behind the restaurant. Sometimes. Small stuff. Like what?
Rosa shrugged.
How work is going. If the weather's getting better. Nothing important, but that was a lie. Tuesday night, he'd asked, do you always work the closing shift? Usually. Morning job ends at noon. I sleep for a few hours, then come here at 5-inch. That's 18-hour days. 16 if I skip lunch. She'd try to make it sound light, like a joke. He hadn't laughed. Just nodded, something dark passing behind his eyes. Wednesday, he'd asked, you have family besides your mother?
No, sir.
Just us. She raised me alone after my dad left. How old were you? 6. He'd taken a long sip of coffee. Tough age to lose a father. I didn't lose him. He chose to leave. Different thing. Lorenzo had studied her face for a long moment.
Yes.
It is. Thursday night arrived with the first clear sky in a week. Rosa actually walked to work without getting soaked, which felt like a miracle. Lorenzo came at 7:30, his usual time now. Same booth. Same black coffee. Evening, Mr. DeLuca. Lorenzo, he looked up from his phone. You've served me coffee 12 times now. I think we can drop the formality. Rosa hesitated. I don't think Marco would. Marco doesn't dictate what you call me. I do. His tone was firm, but not unkind. Lorenzo. Try it. Lorenzo, she said quietly, testing the name in her mouth. It felt dangerous. Intimate. Better. What time do you finish tonight? Midnight, probably. Maybe later, if we get a rush. And then you walk home. It wasn't a question. Rosa wondered how he knew. The buses stop running at 11. How far? 40 minutes. It's fine, the neighborhood's safe enough. Safe enough isn't safe. Lorenzo set down his phone. Chicago at midnight is dangerous for anyone walking alone. Especially someone who looks like they're carrying tip money.
Rosa bristled.
I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can. But you shouldn't have to. Before she could respond, a crash echoed from the kitchen. Rosa turned to see Giuseppe, the chef, yelling at a dishwasher in rapid Italian. She excused herself and hurried over to help clean up the shattered plates. When she returned, Lorenzo was watching the street through the window. Your mother, he said as Rosa refilled his coffee. What's her name? Carmen.
Why?
Just curious. How long has she been sick? 3 years. It got bad about 18 months ago. Rosa didn't know why she was telling him this. Maybe because he asked like he actually cared. She used to work as a seamstress, did alterations at a dry cleaner. But her hands shake too much now. That must be hard, watching someone lose what they love. It is. Rosa's throat tightened. She tries to pretend she's fine, but I hear her coughing at night. The medication helps, but it's not a cure. Just buying time. Lorenzo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. And you buy that time by working yourself to exhaustion. What else am I supposed to do? She's my mother. Most people your age would put her in a state facility. Rosa's eyes flashed. I'm not most people. No, Lorenzo's voice softened. You're not. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the restaurant hummed with Friday night preview energy. A couple laughed at table 9. A businessman argued into his phone near the bar. Do you have family? Rosa asked, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry. That's too personal.
A brother. Marco.
He runs operations in New York. Lorenzo's face revealed nothing. My parents are dead. Heart attack and cancer, 3 years apart. Sophia is Marco's daughter. I watch her when he travels. She's sweet. She's spoiled, but there was affection in his voice. She asked about you, actually. The lady with the pretty earrings who wasn't scared of the thunder. Rosa smiled despite herself. Tell her the thunder's been much quieter lately. I will. Lorenzo checked his watch. Expensive, understated. You should eat something. Ai fine.
Rosa.
When's the last time you had a real meal? She tried to remember. Breakfast yesterday? I had toast. Lorenzo's expression darkened. He raised a hand, and Marco materialized instantly. Yes, Mr. DeLuca? Bring Rosa the chicken parmesan. Full portion. And breadsticks. Sir, I can't, Rosa started. You can and you will. Consider it part of my order. Lorenzo pulled out his wallet and handed Marco $100 bill. Make sure she eats it. All of it. Marco took the money, looking between them with barely concealed shock. Of course, sir. When the food came, Rosa tried to refuse, but Lorenzo simply opened his newspaper and said, Eat. I'm not leaving until you do. So she ate, sitting at the corner of his booth while he read about stock markets and political scandals, and it was the strangest dinner of her life. Why are you being nice to me? She asked finally, setting down her fork. Lorenzo lowered the paper. Why do you think? I don't know. That's why I'm asking. He studied her face, something unreadable in his dark eyes. Because in a world full of people who want something from me, you just want to do your job and take care of your mother. That's refreshing. So I'm what? A novelty. You're honest. He folded the newspaper carefully. That's rarer than you think. He left 20 minutes later, leaving another massive tip. Rosa watched his car disappear into Chicago traffic and wondered what kind of game she'd stumbled into. And more terrifyingly, she wondered why part of her wanted to keep playing. The whispers started on Friday. She's sleeping with him. Has to be. Rosa pretended not to hear, wiping down table 14 with more force than necessary. Jenny and Antonio stood by the coffee station, voices low but not low enough. Come on, there's no way she's. Then explain why Lorenzo DeLuca shows up every single night just to sit in her section. Why he buys her dinner. Why he tips her $500 at a time. Maybe he's just being nice? Antonio snorted. Men like him aren't nice. They're transactional. She's giving him something. Rosa's face burned. She grabbed the dirty dishes and pushed through the kitchen doors, nearly colliding with Giuseppe. Careful, Rosa. Hey, you okay? Fine, she managed, dumping the plates in the bus tub with a clatter. By Saturday, the gossip had spread through the entire staff like poison. Marco pulled her aside before the dinner shift, his expression grave. My office.
Now.
Rosa followed him to the cramped room behind the kitchen, her stomach knotting. Marco closed the door and sat behind his desk, fingers steepled. I'm going to ask you something, and I need the truth. His voice was careful, measured. Are you involved with Lorenzo DeLuca?
No.
Absolutely not. He sits in my section. I serve him coffee. That's it. That's it, Marco's tone suggested he didn't believe her. Rosa, I've worked in this restaurant for 12 years. Lorenzo De Luca has visited maybe 6 times total in all those years. Now he's here every night for 2 weeks, always requesting you, buying you meals, leaving tips that are bigger than your weekly salary. I haven't done anything wrong. I didn't say you did, Marco rubbed his temples. But perception matters. The staff thinks you're leveraging your position. And if they think it, eventually guests will notice. Rumors spread. So, what am I supposed to do? Refuse to serve him?
No. God, no.
That would be worse, Marco leaned forward. Listen to me carefully. Keep your head down. Be professional. Don't give anyone ammunition.
Men like Lorenzo De Luca.
They're dangerous in ways you can't imagine. And women who get close to them, they either end up protected or destroyed. There's no middle ground. Rosa's hands clenched in her lap. I'm just trying to work. I know. But this situation is bigger than work now. His eyes softened slightly. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to protect you. Whatever this is, whatever he wants, be careful. These people don't play by normal rules. Rosa left the office feeling sick. The shift was torture. Every time she passed a group of coworkers, conversation stopped. Eyes followed her. Jenny, who'd been friendly before, now barely acknowledged her. Antonio smirked every time she walked by. Excuse me, she said, trying to squeeze past 2 waiters blocking the hallway. Oh, sorry, Your Majesty. Didn't realize you needed special treatment. The older one, David, stepped aside with exaggerated courtesy. Wouldn't want the boss's favorite to be inconvenienced. I'm not.
Right.
And I'm the Pope, David walked away laughing. Rosa locked herself in the bathroom and pressed her forehead against the cool tile, fighting tears. This was humiliating. She'd done nothing wrong. Nothing, but somehow she'd become the restaurant scandal. Lorenzo didn't come Saturday night. Or Sunday. By Monday, Rosa felt both relieved and strangely disappointed. The gossip started to fade. Other dramas took center stage. Giuseppe's fight with a supplier, Jenny's breakup, the new hostess who couldn't work the reservation system. Maybe it was over. Maybe Lorenzo had gotten bored and moved on to whatever Mafia bosses did with their time. Rosa could go back to being invisible. Tuesday morning, she arrived at her mother's apartment to find Carmen sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by envelopes. Mija, her mother's voice was strained. We need to talk. Rosa's stomach dropped. She knew that tone. The medical bills were spread across the table like casualties of war. Insurance had denied half the claims, some clerical error, a wrong code, a missing signature. The remainder fell to them.
$13,000.
Mom, Rosa picked up the first bill with shaking hands. This can't be right. I called them. It's right. Carmen's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee. They want payment within 60 days, or they'll send it to collections. We can set up a payment plan. They want a minimum of $2,000 down to start a plan. Carmen's eyes were red. Mija, I don't know what to do. Maybe we should look at those state facilities. No, Rosa's voice came out sharp. Absolutely not. Rosa, you're killing yourself working 2 jobs. I can't watch you destroy your life for me. You're my mother. My life doesn't mean anything if you're not in it. Carmen reached across the table and squeezed Rosa's hand. I love you, but this isn't sustainable. Rosa stared at the bills, her mind racing.
$13,000.
With her current jobs, saving that amount would take over a year. By then, who knew what Carmen's condition would be? That night, she lay in her tiny apartment bedroom, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Marco's warning, about the gossip, about the way Lorenzo's eyes had softened when she talked about her mother. She could quit Bellinate, find another restaurant job, somewhere quiet where Mafia bosses didn't complicate everything. But the tips at Bellinate were better than anywhere else. And Lorenzo's tips. His tips alone had covered 2 months of medication. Rosa hated herself for thinking it, but the math was simple and brutal. She needed the money more than she needed her pride. Wednesday night, She went to work with her head held high and her heart full of shame. Lorenzo returned Thursday. Coffee? Rosa asked, notepad ready, voice professionally distant. Please, he looked up at her, reading something in her expression. Everything okay? Fine, sir. Lorenzo, he corrected. Lorenzo, she repeated, but kept her eyes down. His gaze lingered on her face. Liar. But he didn't push, and Rosa was grateful. She'd endure the gossip, the whispers, the humiliation, because her mother needed her. And right now, pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Friday morning, Rosa dragged herself to the office building where she cleaned on weekdays. 4 hours of emptying trash cans, vacuuming cubicles, and scrubbing toilets. Her back ached. Her feet hurt. She'd slept 3 hours. But $13,000 hung over her head like a guillotine, so she kept moving. By noon, she was exhausted. She caught the bus to Bellinate, planning to grab her uniform from her locker and maybe sleep in the break room for an hour before the dinner shift. The restaurant was quiet during the lunch lull. A few stragglers finishing pasta, Marco doing inventory in the back. Rosa waved to Jenny, who still wasn't speaking to her, and headed to the employee area. Her locker was number 7, squeezed between Antonio's and the new dishwashers. Rosa spun the combination lock and pulled it open. An envelope fell out.
Thick. Manila.
Unmarked except for her name in elegant handwriting. Rosa looked around. The hallway was empty. She picked up the envelope with trembling fingers and opened it. Inside were documents. Medical bills. Her mother's medical bills. She recognized the hospital letterhead, the account numbers she'd memorized from staring at them every night. But these bills were stamped in red ink, paid in full. All of them. Rosa's knees buckled. She sat down hard on the bench, papers spilling into her lap.
$13,000. Gone.
Erased. Like someone had waved a magic wand and made her biggest nightmare disappear. There was a note, handwritten on a Bella Nate napkin. Debts settled with dignity, L. Rosa's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it.
Elle.
Lorenzo. He'd paid her mother's medical bills.
$13,000.
He'd just paid them. Like it was nothing. Like it was pocket change. The tears came without warning, hot and fast, streaming down her cheeks. Rosa pressed the napkin to her mouth, trying to muffle the sobs that wanted to tear out of her chest. Relief, gratitude, shame, anger, everything hit her at once. She couldn't accept this. It was too much. Too generous. Too dangerous. Men like Lorenzo de Luca didn't give without expecting something in return. But God, the relief. Her mother was safe.
For now.
The weight that had been crushing Rosa's chest for 3 years had suddenly lifted, and she could breathe again. Rosa? She jumped, quickly shoving the papers back into the envelope. Marco stood in the doorway, frowning. You okay? You look. Have you been crying?
No.
Allergies. Rosa wiped her eyes, but her voice cracked. Just allergies. Marco didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Shift starts in an hour. Get yourself together. Rosa nodded, clutching the envelope to her chest. She couldn't tell anyone. Not Jenny, not Antonio. Definitely not Marco. If word got out that Lorenzo de Luca had paid $13,000 for her mother's medical bills, the gossip would explode. They'd confirm every ugly rumor they'd already whispered. And maybe they'd be right too. Because Rosa didn't know what this meant. What Lorenzo wanted from her. What she'd just agreed to by default. She tucked the envelope into her backpack and locked her locker, her mind spinning. That night, Lorenzo came at his usual time. 7:30. Same booth. But Rosa couldn't look at him the same way. Coffee. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Please, Lorenzo glanced up from his phone, and his eyes narrowed. You've been crying. Fine. Rosa. The bills. She set down the coffee pot with too much force. My mother's bills. You paid them. Lorenzo leaned back, his expression unreadable. Yes. That's $13,000. Is it? I didn't check the total. Rosa stared at him. How can you not check? She stopped, lowering her voice. Why would you do that? Because you needed help. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Lorenzo's tone was calm, matter of fact. You worked 2 jobs to take care of your mother. The bills were crushing you. Now they're not. Simple. Nothing about this is simple. Rosa glanced around, making sure no one was listening. People already think I'm that weird. I don't care what people think. Well, I do. I have to work here. I have to face these people every day. Her voice cracked. You can't throw money at my problems and expect. I expect nothing. Lorenzo's eyes locked on hers, suddenly intense. Nothing, Rosa. The debt is paid. You owe me nothing. Not gratitude, not loyalty, not anything. Then why? He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tight. Because when I was 12, my mother got sick. Cancer. My father worked 3 jobs trying to pay for treatment, but it wasn't enough. She died in a state hospital, surrounded by strangers, because we couldn't afford private care. His voice went cold. I swore that when I had money, I'd never watch someone suffer that way again. Not if I could prevent it. Rosa felt tears prickling again. Lorenzo, your mother will get the care she needs.
You'll stop working yourself to death.
That's all I want. But people will think. Let them think whatever they want. Lorenzo's tone softened slightly. You told me once that you didn't judge customers. Well, I don't judge the opinions of small-minded people who have nothing better to do than gossip. Rosa stood there, the coffee pot growing heavy in her hand, her heart hammering. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just accept it.
And Rosa?
Lorenzo picked up his coffee. The napkin was right. This was about dignity. Yours. Your mother's.
Nostrines.
No debt.
Just.
Let it be a gift. Rosa nodded, not trusting her voice. She walked away before the tears could start again, ducking into the kitchen and leaning against the wall, hands pressed to her face. Lorenzo De Luca had just saved her life. And she had absolutely no idea what that meant. Or what it would cost her in the end. Vincent Calabrese had been delivering specialty meats to Bella Notte for 3 weeks, and nobody suspected a thing. He wore the right uniform. White coat, clipboard, friendly smile. He showed up Tuesday and Friday mornings with prime cuts and restaurant-grade steaks. He joked with Giuseppe in the kitchen, complained about Chicago traffic, and did everything a legitimate food supplier would do. Except Vincent Calabrese didn't work for a food company. He worked for the Moretti family. And he was watching Lorenzo De Luca. Friday afternoon, Vincent made his delivery early, timing it perfectly. He wheeled in the dolly of beef, chatting with the line cooks, positioning himself near the storage room where he had a clear view of the dining room through the kitchen door's window. At 7:34 p.m., Lorenzo walked in. Same time as always. Same booth. Same black coffee. And the same waitress, Rosa Martinez. Vincent watched as she brought Lorenzo his coffee, their conversation brief, but comfortable. Familiar. He noted the way Lorenzo's expression softened when she approached, subtle, but there. The way his eyes followed her when she walked away. Most importantly, Vincent noted the way Rosa smiled. Not the professional waitress smile she gave other customers. Something real. That's the 4th time this week, Giuseppe muttered, noticing Vincent watching. Boss must really love our coffee. Or something else. Vincent grinned, loading empty containers back onto his dolly. Pretty waitress.
Giuseppe shrugged. Rosa?
She's good people. Works hard, keeps her head down. She De Luca's girl? Nah. At least, I don't think so. Giuseppe lowered his voice. But between you and me, he's here every night. Always her section. Something's going on. Vincent filed that information away and finished his delivery. That evening, he sat in his car 3 blocks from Bella Notte and made a phone call. Yeah, it's me. No, I'm certain. 4th visit this week. Probably more I haven't seen. Same pattern every time. Corner booth, Section 3, stays about an hour. The Waitress.
Rosa Martinez.
Early 20s, nothing special. Works 2 jobs from what I hear. That's what I'm saying. She's not family, not connected, just some girl. But boss man's interested. Real interested. Vincent listened to the voice on the other end, a slow smile spreading across his face. Yeah, I can do that. Give me a few days to confirm the pattern.
Copy that.
I'll send photos. He hung up and lit a cigarette, watching the restaurant's warm glow against the dark Chicago street.
Lorenzo De Luca.
Untouchable. Protected by layers of security, legal shields, and enough firepower to start a war. You couldn't get to him directly. Too many guards, too many precautions. But a waitress with no protection? No security detail. That was a different story. 300 miles away, in a Philadelphia penthouse, Thomas Moretti studied the photos Vincent had sent. Lorenzo De Luca sitting in a restaurant booth. Same booth, different nights. And in every photo, somewhere in the frame, a young woman with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Who is she? Thomas's consigliere, Frank, leaned over his shoulder. Nobody. A waitress. Thomas zoomed in on Rosa's face. But look at him. Look at how he's watching her. Frank squinted. Could just be checking out the staff. Lorenzo doesn't check out staff, he pays people to do that. Thomas set down his phone. He's visiting this restaurant every night for 2 weeks. Personal visits. Sitting in her section. That's not business. That's personal. You think he's sleeping with her? Doesn't matter what they're doing. What matters is that he cares. Thomas smiled coldly. We've been trying to figure out how to hurt De Luca without starting an all-out war. His warehouses are too protected, his businesses too insulated, his family too well-guarded. But this girl? She's vulnerable, Frank finished.
Exactly.
We grab her, we send a message. Your empire isn't as untouchable as you think. Thomas walked to the window, looking out at the Philadelphia skyline. We don't have to kill her. Just scare her. Rough her up a little. Make Lorenzo understand that caring about people makes him weak. When?
Soon.
Let Vincent confirm the pattern first. I want to know her schedule, her route home, when she's most isolated. Thomas turned back to Frank. And Frank?
Keep this quiet.
Only our most trusted people. If Lorenzo gets wind of this before we move, he'll bury her so deep we'll never find her. Frank nodded. I'll handle it personally.
Good.
Because if this works, we won't just hurt Lorenzo De Luca. We'll break him. Back in Chicago, Rosa had no idea she was being watched. She served Lorenzo his coffee, smiled when he asked about her mother, and tried not to think about the $13,000 that had saved her life. Lorenzo left at 8:30, same as always, and Rosa cleaned his table. She found another napkin under his coffee cup. Sleep more. You still look tired. Rosa couldn't help smiling as she tucked the napkin into her apron. Outside, Vincent Calabrese sat in his car, camera ready, documenting everything. The time Lorenzo arrived. The time he left. The route his car took. The security detail, 2 bodyguards both armed. And most importantly, he waited until midnight to watch Rosa leave through the back entrance, alone, walking toward the bus stop.
No bodyguards.
No protection. Just a tired waitress heading home. Vincent took 3 photos and sent them to Thomas with a simple message. Target acquired. Easy grab. Awaiting your orders. The response came 60 seconds later. Next week. Make it clean. Vincent smiled and started his engine. In war, you didn't attack the fortress. You attacked what the fortress was trying to protect. And Lorenzo De Luca had just made his biggest mistake, caring about someone who couldn't defend herself. Tuesday started like any other day. Rosa cleaned offices, caught 3 hours of sleep, and arrived at Bellinate by 5 p.m. Lorenzo had visited every night for the past week. The routine had become almost comfortable. Coffee at 7:30, quiet conversation, his cryptic napkin notes. The staff had mostly stopped gossiping, accepting it as one of those inexplicable things rich men did. Rosa was wiping down tables when her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello. Ms. Martinez? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. This is Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about Carmen Martinez. Rosa's blood turned to ice. What's wrong? Is she okay? Your mother was admitted to the ER about 20 minutes ago. Respiratory distress. The doctors are with her now, but you should come immediately. Yes, I'm coming. I'm coming right now. Rosa's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. Is she? Just get here as quickly as you can, Ms. Martinez. The line went dead. Rosa stood frozen for 3 seconds, her mind blank with terror. Then she ripped off her apron and ran toward Marco's office. I have to go. My mom, hospital emergency. Marco looked up from his desk, alarmed. Rosa, what? I don't have time. She was already backing away, grabbing her jacket from the hook. My mom's in the ER. I have to go right now. Wait, let me call you a cab. But Rosa was already out the door, bursting through the kitchen into the alley behind Bellinate. The bus would take 40 minutes. A cab would cost money she couldn't spare, but she'd pay anything. Rosa Martinez. She spun around. 2 men stood at the mouth of the alley, blocking the path to the street. Both wore dark clothes. Both had their hands in their pockets in a way that made Rosa's survival instinct scream. Who are you? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Friend of a friend, the taller one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We just want to talk. I have to get to the hospital. My mother. There is no emergency, the second man stepped forward. Your mother's fine. Home watching television, probably. Rosa's heart stopped. What? The call was fake, sweetheart. Just needed to get you alone. The tall one pulled his hand from his pocket. Not a weapon, but his presence was threat enough. Now, you're gonna come with us nice and quiet. Nobody gets hurt. Rosa backed up, her shoulders hitting the brick wall. I don't understand. What do you want? Not you. Your boyfriend, the shorter man sneered. Lorenzo de Luca thinks he owns this city. Time someone reminded him, he doesn't. The pieces clicked together. The fake call. The ambush. They were using her to get to Lorenzo. I'm not his girlfriend. I'm just a waitress. Save it. We've been watching. He cares about you. That makes you valuable. The tall one moved closer. You can come easy, or we can make it hard. Your choice. Rosa's mind raced. The alley was a dead end behind her. The only exit was past these 2 men. She could scream, but the kitchen doors were thick and the dinner rush was loud. She bolted.
Pure instinct.
She feinted left, then dove right, trying to slip past them toward the street. The shorter man caught her arm, yanking her back hard. Rosa screamed and clawed at his face. He swore and shoved her against the wall. Stupid. Headlights suddenly flooded the alley, bright and blinding. A black SUV screeched to a stop, blocking the alley entrance. Doors flew open. Lorenzo's bodyguards, Sal and the other one whose name Rosa had never learned, emerged like shadows. Let her go, Sal's voice was deadly quiet. Right now. The 2 men froze. The shorter one still had Rosa's arm in a painful grip. This isn't your business, the tall one said, trying to sound confident. We're just... I said let her go. A second SUV pulled up behind the first. More men emerged.
4. 6.
All armed. All focused on the 2 men in the alley. The shorter man released Rosa's arm and stepped back, hands raised. Hey, we were just talking. On the ground. Face down. Hands behind your head. They complied immediately, the fight draining out of them. Lorenzo stepped out of the first SUV. Rosa had never seen him like this. His face was a mask of cold fury, his dark eyes absolutely lethal. He looked at the 2 men on the ground like they were insects he was deciding whether to crush. Then his gaze found Rosa, pressed against the wall, shaking. His expression shifted, just for a moment, something raw and almost vulnerable crossing his face. Rosa, come here. She stumbled forward on numb legs. Lorenzo met her halfway, his hands settling on her shoulders, steadying her. Are you hurt? His voice was tight, controlled. Did they touch you?
I'm okay.
They said my mother, the hospital called. Your mother is fine. I have someone checking on her right now. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. The call was fake. A setup to get you alone. Rosa's legs gave out. Lorenzo caught her, one arm around her waist, holding her upright. I've got you, he murmured. You're safe. Sal hauled one of the men to his feet. Boss, what do you want us to do with them? Lorenzo looked at the two men with an expression that made Rosa's blood run cold. Find out who sent them. Find out everything they know. His voice dropped to something barely human. And make sure whoever's responsible understands what happens when they touch what's mine. Rosa's breath caught. What's mine? Take her to my car, Lorenzo ordered. Get her somewhere safe. Wait. Rosa grabbed a sleeve. What about you? I'll handle this. Lorenzo's eyes softened slightly when he looked at her. Trust me. Sal gently guided Rosa toward the SUV. She looked back once and saw Lorenzo crouching beside one of the men, speaking in a voice too quiet to hear. The man's face went pale with terror. Whatever Lorenzo was saying, it wasn't a conversation. It was a promise. Lorenzo's SUV smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Rosa sat in the back seat, wrapped in Lorenzo's suit jacket. He draped it over her shoulders without asking, trying to stop her hands from shaking. Sal drove. Lorenzo sat beside her, silent, staring out the window with that same cold fury etched into his features. They'd been driving for 10 minutes before Rosa found her voice. Where are we going? Your apartment. I'm making sure you get home safely. Lorenzo, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His tone left no room for argument.
Rosa swallowed.
My mother. You said someone's checking on her? 2 of my men are at her apartment right now.
She's fine.
Confused why strangers are asking if she's okay. But fine. Lorenzo finally looked at her, his expression softening slightly. I'll have them stay until we figure out who ordered this. The Morettis, Sal spoke from the driver's seat. Has to be. Philadelphia's been trying to push into our territory for months. This reeks of Thomas Moretti. Then Thomas Moretti just made a fatal mistake. Lorenzo's voice went cold again. Rosa felt sick. This is because of me. Because you've been coming to the restaurant. This is because violent men think they can use innocent people as pawns. Lorenzo turned to face her fully. None of this is your fault, Rosa. But they grabbed me to hurt you.
Yes.
And they'll pay for it. Simple. Final. The SUV pulled up outside Rosa's building, a rundown apartment complex in a neighborhood that looked worse at night. Graffiti on the walls. Broken streetlights. The kind of place where people minded their own business. Lorenzo studied the building with visible disapproval. You live here. It wasn't a question. It's affordable. Rosa bristled defensively. Not all of us can live in penthouses. I'm not judging your choices. I'm judging the security. Or lack thereof. Lorenzo opened his door.
Come on.
I'm walking you up. That's really not. Rosa, he looked at her.
Please.
Let me do this. The quiet please undid her resistance. They rode the elevator to the 4th floor in silence. Rosa was hyper-aware of Lorenzo beside her, tall, powerful, completely out of place in the flickering fluorescent light and scratched metal walls. Her apartment was at the end of a hallway. Rosa unlocked the door with shaking hands. You don't have to come in. Lorenzo was already inside, his eyes scanning the studio apartment in seconds. Kitchenette. Fold-out couch. Small table. Bathroom barely bigger than a closet. Everything clean but worn, held together by determination and duct tape. This is where you sleep after working 18-hour days. Lorenzo's voice was carefully neutral. It's enough. Rosa closed the door, suddenly self-conscious. I'm saving money. For a better place. Eventually. Lorenzo walked to the window and looked out at the fire escape. No security system. No deadbolt. Window doesn't lock properly. He turned back to her. You can't stay here. Excuse me? It's not safe. After tonight. This is my home, Lorenzo. Rosa crossed her arms. I'm not leaving because some thugs tried to scare me. They didn't try to scare you. They tried to kidnap you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Rosa sank onto the couch, the adrenaline finally wearing off, leaving her exhausted and shaken. I don't understand any of this.
I'm nobody.
I'm just a waitress trying to pay my mom's bills. Why does any of this matter? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then he sat beside her. Not too close, respecting her space, but near enough that she could feel his presence. You want to know why this matters?
His voice was softer now.
Because in that restaurant 3 weeks ago, you looked at me and saw a man. Not a monster. Not a criminal. Just a man holding a scared child. He paused. Do you know how rare that is? Rosa shook her head. Everyone who looks at me sees what I can do for them or what I can do to them.
Fear. Greed.
Respect that's really just terror in disguise. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. But you? You apologized for an accident. You told me the truth when I asked questions. You didn't want anything from me except to be left alone to do your job. That's just being decent. Exactly. Lorenzo looked at her, and for the first time, Rosa saw past the cold exterior to something raw underneath. You reminded me I'm still human. That somewhere under all the violence and the power plays and the blood, there's still a person. Someone who can sit in a restaurant and have coffee. Someone who can care about a waitress and her sick mother. Rosa's throat tightened. Lorenzo. I've spent 15 years building walls, Rosa. Making sure no one gets close enough to hurt me or the people I love. And then you stumbled into my life with your honesty and your tired eyes and your determination to take care of your mother no matter what it cost you. He shook his head slightly. You broke through without even trying. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything. Lorenzo stood, pulling out his phone. But I need you to accept protection. 2 of my men will watch this building. You won't see them, but they'll be there. You go to work, they follow. You go to your mother's, they follow. I can't live like that. You can and you will. At least until we handle the Morettas. His tone brooked no argument. I'm not asking, Rosa. This isn't negotiable. Rosa wanted to fight it. Wanted to insist she could take care of herself. But she remembered the alley. The men's hands on her. The terror in her chest. Okay, she whispered. Lorenzo made 2 quick calls, speaking in clipped sentences. When he finished, he looked back at Rosa. They'll be in position within the hour. You need anything at all. You call this number. He handed her a card with a phone number written in pen. Day or night. This is your number? Direct line. It's always on. Rosa stared at the card. Why are you doing all this? Lorenzo moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the knob. Because in a world full of people who want something from me, you just wanted to take care of your mother and do your job. That kind of goodness is worth protecting. He left before she could respond. Rosa sat alone in her apartment, Lorenzo's jacket still around her shoulders, his phone number in her hand, and 2 invisible bodyguards somewhere in the darkness below. Everything had changed. And she couldn't decide if she'd been saved or if she'd just stepped into something far more dangerous than a dark alley. 2 weeks passed without incident. Rosa went to work with invisible shadows trailing her. She never saw Lorenzo's men, but she felt them. A presence in the parking lot, a figure at the bus stop, headlights that followed at a careful distance. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt safe. Lorenzo still came to the restaurant, but something had shifted between them. The conversations lasted longer. He'd started smiling more, real smiles that made him look years younger. Last Tuesday, he told her a story about Sophia getting expelled from preschool for organizing a pasta rebellion during lunch. Rosa had laughed so hard she'd snorted, and Lorenzo had looked at her like she'd given him something precious. She was falling for him. The realization had hit her 3 nights ago, watching him read the newspaper in his booth, one hand absently stirring his coffee. Lorenzo De Luca, Mafia boss, feared by everyone who knew his name, and all Rosa could think was how much she wanted to smooth the worry line between his eyebrows. It was stupid, dangerous,
Impossible.
but her heart didn't care about logic. Friday night, Marco asked her to stay late. Giuseppe's doing inventory. Someone needs to be front of house in case any stragglers show up. You mind? Rosa checked her phone. 10:47 p.m.
Sure.
I could use the overtime. By 11:30, the restaurant was empty except for Rosa and Giuseppe in the back. She wiped down tables, refilled salt shakers, swept the floors. Mindless work that let her thoughts drift. Lorenzo hadn't come tonight. He'd texted earlier, something about a business meeting in Milwaukee, wouldn't be back until 8. Rosa had been disappointed, which was ridiculous. She wasn't his girlfriend. She was just
What?
a waitress he decided to protect? A friend. A complication he couldn't afford. Rosa was restacking menus when she heard the front door open. Sorry, we're closed. 4 men walked in. They didn't look like lost customers. They moved with purpose, spreading out across the dining room with military precision. All 4 wore dark clothes. 3 of them had their hands under their jackets. Rosa's blood went cold. Where's DeLuca? The leader, stocky, with a scar across his cheek, looked around the empty restaurant. Don't lie. We know he comes here every night. He's not here, Rosa's voice shook. I don't know where he is. Scarface smiled. Then we wait. Tony, check the back. Make sure we're alone. One of the men disappeared toward the kitchen. Rosa heard Giuseppe shout, then a crash. Her stomach lurched. You didn't have to hurt him. Shut up, Scarface pulled out a gun. DeLuca shows up, you tell him Thomas Moretti sends his regards. Understand? Rosa nodded, mind racing. Lorenzo wasn't coming. He was in Milwaukee. These men would wait for nothing, realize they'd been set up or misinformed, and then the front door opened. Lorenzo walked in, phone to his ear, not looking up. Tell him the shipment arrives Tuesday, not Wednesday. I don't care what the manifest says.
He stopped.
For guns pointed at him. Lorenzo's expression didn't change. He slowly lowered his phone, his eyes scanning the room with terrifying calm. When his gaze found Rosa, something flickered, fear, quickly masked. Lorenzo DeLuca, Scarface grinned. Thomas Moretti wants you to know your territory isn't as secure as you think. Clearly, Lorenzo's voice was steady. You planning to talk me to death? Or is there a point to this? The point is, everything happened at once. Gunfire exploded. Lorenzo dove behind a table. Scarface aimed. Rosa didn't think. She just moved, grabbing a chair and hurling it at the gunman. It hit his shoulder, throwing off his aim. Bullets shattered the front window. Rosa, get down, Lorenzo shouted. More gunfire. Wood splintered. Glass rained down. Rosa dropped to the floor, crawling toward Lorenzo's overturned table. Her ears rang. Smoke filled the air. Lorenzo was moving, calculating angles, looking for an exit. This way. Rosa grabbed his arm and yanked him toward the kitchen. More bullets chased them. They crashed through the swinging doors, and Rosa slammed them shut. The pantry. She pulled Lorenzo toward the walk-in storage room, steel reinforced, originally installed as a safe room when the restaurant was built. Giuseppe had shown it to her during orientation. They stumbled inside. Rosa slammed the heavy door and spun the lock. Steel bolts clicked into place. Darkness. Complete. Suffocating. Rosa's back hit metal shelving. Her lungs burned. Outside, she could hear shouting, footsteps, the kitchen doors banging open. Find them. Check every room. Lorenzo's breathing was too loud. Rosa reached out in the darkness, found his face, and pressed her hand over his mouth. He went rigid under her touch. She leaned in close, her lips brushing his ear. Quiet, she breathed. His hand came up and covered hers, not pulling it away, just holding it there. His heart hammered against her arm where she pressed against him in the cramped space. Footsteps approached. The pantry door handle rattled. It's locked. Shoot the lock. It's steel, idiot. We'd need a battering ram. A pause. Forget it. Cops are probably already coming. Let's move. The footsteps retreated. Voices faded. Car engines started outside, tires screeching. Silence. Rosa and Lorenzo stood frozen in the darkness, her hand still over his mouth, their bodies pressed together between shelves of canned tomatoes and industrial flour bags. Slowly, Rosa lowered her hand. "Are you hurt?" she whispered.
No.
"You?" His voice was rough, strained. "I'm okay. You threw a chair at a man with a gun." "I wasn't thinking." "You saved my life." Lorenzo's hands found her shoulders in the darkness, gripping tight. "Rosa, if you hadn't been here." "But I was." His forehead dropped to hers. She felt him shaking, adrenaline, fear, something else she couldn't name. "You should have run," he breathed. "Hidden." "Not." "I wasn't leaving you." "Why?" The question came out almost broken. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" Rosa's hand found his face in the darkness, her thumb brushing his cheekbone. "Because you're worth saving." Lorenzo made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and pulled her closer. They stood like that, holding each other in the dark, while sirens wailed in the distance. The police kept them at the restaurant until 3 in the morning. Detectives asked questions Rosa couldn't answer. When did the men arrive? How many guns? Did they say anything specific? She repeated the same information over and over, exhausted and numb, while crime scene techs photographed bullet holes and collected shell casings. Lorenzo sat beside her, calm and composed, answering questions with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this before. When one detective pushed too hard, "Funny how trouble follows you, Mr. DeLuca." Lorenzo's lawyer materialized and shut down the interrogation. At 3:15 a.m., Lorenzo's driver took Rosa home. She collapsed onto her couch, still wearing her uniform, smelling like gunpowder and fear. She woke 6 hours later to her phone buzzing. "Rosa?" "Oh, thank God, Mija. I heard about the restaurant. Are you okay?" Her mother's voice cracked with worry. "I'm fine, Mom. I promise." The news said there was a shooting, that people were hurt. "Giuseppe has a concussion, but he'll be okay." Nobody else was there. Rosa sat up, her body aching. "I'm fine. Really." But she wasn't fine. Her hands started shaking the moment she hung up. The apartment felt too small, too quiet. Every sound made her jump. Footsteps in the hallway, a door closing, a car backfiring on the street. She kept seeing the guns, hearing the gunfire, feeling Lorenzo's heart hammering against her in the darkness. "You saved my life." Had she? Or had she just gotten lucky? Rosa tried to sleep, but gave up after 20 minutes. She made coffee and sat at her small table, staring at nothing, replaying the attack over and over. At noon, someone knocked on her door. She checked the peephole. Lorenzo stood in the hallway, looking exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes. His jaw shadowed with stubble. No suit jacket, just dress pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Rosa opened the door. "Hi," she said, because she couldn't think of anything else. "Hi." Lorenzo's eyes scanned her face, checking for damage. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. Lorenzo entered, bringing with him the scent of coffee and expensive cologne. He looked around the apartment like he was seeing it differently now. "You should have called me," he said quietly. "If you needed anything." "I was fine." Liar, but his tone was gentle. "You nearly died last night because of me." "We both nearly died because of the Morettas." "Same thing." Lorenzo ran a hand through his hair, messing it up in a way that made him look younger. Vulnerable. "My consigliere came to see me this morning. Told me I was being reckless. That caring about you makes me weak. Makes me a target." Rosa's chest tightened. "What did you say?" "I told him that if you hadn't been there last night, I'd be dead." Lorenzo's eyes locked on hers. "The moment I walked into that restaurant, I was thinking about a phone call, not paying attention. You saw the danger before I did. You threw a chair at an armed man. You pulled me into that pantry and kept me quiet when my instinct was to fight. Anyone would have.
No.
They wouldn't. Lorenzo stepped closer. Most people would have frozen. Or run. Or hidden and hoped I'd handle it. But you didn't hesitate. You protected me the same way you protect your mother. The same way you protect everyone you care about. Rosa's throat went tight. Lorenzo. I'm not finished. He pulled something from his pocket, a folded document. Bellinate will be closed for 2 weeks for repairs. But when it reopens, it needs new management. Marco's retiring. He's too shaken to continue. He handed her the document. Rosa unfolded it with trembling hands. An employment contract. Her name typed at the top. General Manager. Bellinate. Her eyes widened. What is this? A job offer. Salary, benefits, profit sharing. You'd oversee the entire operation, staff, menu development, finances. Everything. Lorenzo, I can't. I'm a waitress. I don't have experience managing. You've been managing. Just not officially. Lorenzo's voice was firm. You train new staff because you're patient. You smooth over customer complaints because you're good with people. You cover shifts when others call out because you're reliable. The staff respects you.
Customers like you.
You're exactly what that restaurant needs. Rosa stared at the contract, her vision blurring. I don't deserve this. You earned it. By throwing a chair? By being honest. Lorenzo stepped closer, his hand coming up to tilt her chin until she met his eyes. You earned it the moment you slipped on that floor and kissed my cheek, and then looked at me without fear. The moment you told me you didn't judge customers. The moment you chose to take care of your mother instead of taking the easy path. His thumb brushed her jawline. You earned it by being exactly who you are. Tears spilled down Rosa's cheeks. People will say, I'm sleeping with you. That this is nepotism or... Let them say whatever they want. I know the truth. You know the truth. His voice softened. Rosa, I'm not asking you to be with me. I'm not asking for anything except that you take this job and let me give you something you've earned. Something legitimate. Something that has nothing to do with last night or the medical bills or any of it. But it does have to do with it, Rosa whispered. All of it. Everything connects. Maybe. Lorenzo's hand dropped from her face. But this contract stands on its own merit. You don't owe me anything. Not gratitude. Not loyalty. Nothing. You can take the job and tell me to never visit the restaurant again. You can take the job, and we can remain. Whatever we are now. What are we now? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. I don't know, he admitted. But I'd like to find out. If you'll let me. Rosa looked at the contract. At Lorenzo. At the future suddenly spreading before her like an open door. Okay, she breathed.
Yes.
I'll take it. Lorenzo's smile was like sunrise after a long, dark night. Good. You start in 2 weeks. 1 month later, Bellinate reopened with new windows, fresh paint, and Rosa Martinez's name on the office door. She arrived early every morning, reviewing inventory orders and staff schedules, tasting Giuseppe's new menu items, ensuring every detail met the standards Lorenzo had built. The responsibility was overwhelming. The hours were brutal. Rosa loved every minute of it. Morning, boss. Jenny poked her head into the office, grinning. The coldness from weeks ago had thawed completely. Table assignments for tonight. On the board by the kitchen. And Jenny? Can you train the new hire on the espresso machine? Antonio showed her yesterday, but she's still struggling. On it. Rosa smiled as Jenny left. The staff had been skeptical at first, whispers about favoritism, questions about her qualifications. But Rosa had shown up every day, worked alongside them, listened to their concerns, and earned their respect one shift at a time. The restaurant was thriving. Reservations were booked solid for 3 weeks. Food critics had given glowing reviews. Even Marco had called to congratulate her, admitting he'd underestimated her capabilities. But the best part? The part that made Rosa's chest warm every evening around 7:30. Lorenzo still came. Not every night anymore, his business demanded too much for that. But 3, sometimes 4 times a week, his black SUV would pull up, and he'd walk through the door looking for her. Except now he didn't sit in Section 3. He came straight to her office. Rosa glanced at her watch. 7:28 p.m. Right on schedule. She stood, smoothing her dress, black and professional, manager appropriate, and checked her reflection in the small mirror. Hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. The same tired eyes, but with something new in them now.
Hope.
A knock at the door. Come in. Lorenzo entered, carrying 2 takeout containers from the kitchen and a bottle of wine. No bodyguards trailing him. No tension in his shoulders. Just Lorenzo, looking relaxed in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater. Giuseppe made osso buco, he said, setting the containers on her desk. Says you haven't eaten since breakfast. Traitor, Rosa muttered, but she was smiling. I've been busy. You're always busy. Lorenzo uncorked the wine and poured 2 glasses. That's why I bring dinner. This had become their routine. Lorenzo would arrive after the dinner rush started, and they'd eat together in her office while she went over the day's challenges. A difficult customer, a scheduling conflict, a supplier issue. He'd listen, offer advice when asked, and mostly just keep her company while the restaurant hummed beyond the door. It was domestic. Comfortable. Nothing like Rosa had imagined falling in love would feel. And she had fallen in love.
Completely. Terrifyingly.
How is Milwaukee? She asked, accepting the wine glass. Productive. The Morettus won't be a problem anymore. Rosa stilled. Lorenzo. I didn't kill anyone. He held up a hand, reading her expression. Thomas Moretti and I had a conversation. Very civilized. I explained that attacking innocent people under my protection was unacceptable. He explained he was trying to send a message. We reached an understanding. What kind of understanding? The kind where he stays in Philadelphia, I stay in Chicago, and no one else gets hurt. Lorenzo's eyes hardened slightly. The men who attacked the restaurant have been dealt with.
Permanently.
Rosa decided she didn't need details. And what about us? Are we still under protection? You're always under protection, Lorenzo's voice softened. But the active threat is gone. You can live normally again. No shadows following you. Normal. Rosa almost laughed. Nothing about her life was normal anymore. Eat, Lorenzo commanded gently, pushing the container toward her. Giuseppe will be offended if you waste it. They ate in comfortable silence, the sounds of the restaurant filtering through the walls. Laughter, clinking silverware, Jenny's voice taking orders. Rosa's restaurant. Her responsibility. Her success. I'm proud of you, Lorenzo said suddenly. Rosa looked up, surprised. For what? Everything. The way you've handled this place.
The staff.
The pressure. He set down his fork, his dark eyes holding hers. You've exceeded every expectation. And not just mine. Your own. I had help. You had opportunity. What you did with it. That was all you. Rosa's chest tightened with emotion. Lorenzo. 3 weeks ago you asked what we are, he interrupted. I didn't have an answer. But I do now. Her heart hammered. What are we? Lorenzo stood and walked around the desk. He took Rosa's hand and gently pulled her to her feet, his other hand settling on her waist. We're 2 people who found each other in the middle of a storm, he said quietly. You were trying to catch a water pitcher. I was trying to protect my niece. And somehow, by complete accident, you kissed me. Rosa's breath caught. I remember. You apologized. I told you next time. Don't. His hand came up to cup her face. So I'm asking now. If you kiss me again, on purpose this time, would you apologize? No, Rosa whispered. Good. Lorenzo leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, to change her mind, to choose safety over risk. Rosa closed the distance and kissed him. Not by accident this time. Not in panic or fear or confusion. This kiss was deliberate. Honest. A promise. When they finally pulled apart, Lorenzo was smiling, that real smile that transformed his entire face. "I love you," he said simply. In case that wasn't clear, Rosa laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too. You stubborn, impossible man." "Manager," he kissed her forehead. "Don't forget your new title." Outside, the restaurant continued its Friday night rhythm. The staff worked efficiently. Customers enjoyed their meals. Life went on ordinary and beautiful. But in the office with the door closed, Rosa Martinez, former waitress, current manager, and the woman who'd accidentally kissed a mafia boss, stood wrapped in Lorenzo De Luca's arms and understood that some accidents were actually fate wearing a disguise. The storm had brought them together. But it was their choice to stay.